Hi, it's Alistair Boyd again. How you going? I've got a lot of thoughts swirling through my head tonight. I was going to talk about something else, but I was reading an interesting thing about protecting different people's rights to behave their own way, have their own beliefs, that sort of thing. And this relates to what I was talking about before about being fiercely moderate. You don't have to be an extremist, but you should treat other people's point of view with respect. You should take a bit from one side or the other. Make up your own minds, and if you have a very strong opinion, that's great. But you don't have to be an extremist. Just rarely, sometimes an extremist or an individual or unique group is in fact right or correct. But I'm not saying you have to compromise or be in the middle. I'm just saying many people have strong opinions, and yet they are somewhere in the middle of the various rainbows or spectra, and I think that's fine. Have your strong opinion, try to get realistic and good sources, and then defend yourself, but defend other people's right to have their opinion too. And the reason I say all of this is because I was reading something that's written by excuse me, just rolling up the screen here. It's in some newsletter by a guy named Vern Gardy, who's in the sort of financial world, and I read some of his stuff, and some of it I think is very clever, very interesting, different perspective to me, and some of it I think is rubbish. Well, that's not true. Some of it I just disagree with. But he started with a very interesting story, which I've heard before, but I like the way he put it. Which is to say, in the 1930s, a Lutheran pastor named Niemoller, was a supporter of the Third Reich, and he got the chance to meet Adolf Hitler with some other people. And while he was in the meeting, he actually discovered that the Gestapo were following him and spying on him and phone tapping and things like that. And he realised that what was being said in public wasn't actually how the government was behaving. And so he started protesting against that and the operations of the secret police. Anyway, he ended up having 7 years in a concentration camp. And later he wrote this quote, which I've read before. First they came for the socialists, and I didn't speak up because I wasn't a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I didn't speak out because I wasn't a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I didn't speak out because I was not a Jew. And then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me. And I think that's a really good point, that we should be supportive of other groups, particularly minorities or disadvantaged people. Having said that, some extremists are in the minority, and I don't say I'm supporting the extremists, but I do think you should maybe respect their right to have a point of view, consider it, look at it, and then dismiss it if it's false or dangerous or damaging to the rest of society. And I suppose I should say, actually, no, if it's false, because it might damage society, but it could be true and real. So that's a contradiction to consider. Anyway, I think we need to defend other people's rights to have their opinion. That actual quote came up once before, I think, from the editor of Motorcycle magazine, who was saying he's not in favour of the or I think he was saying he's not in favour of the gun lobby, but we should be very careful how the gun lobby is being treated. That was particularly here in Australia, I think, after the Port Arthur massacre. He's not in favour of the gun lobby, but the gun lobby was being treated as pariahs, and if we, the motorcyclists, weren't careful, we might be next. It's a good point. That doesn't mean that we should accept outrageous behaviour or agree with somebody else, or indeed, just to take the example of the gun lobby, let anybody have any sort of weapon willy-nilly. No, we should take a lot of care about that sort of thing. But we should be careful how we do restrictions. I have to say, in that article that I just mentioned, that starts off the quote about that German pastor, further down it goes on to talk about climate change, and the person writing the article thinks that the reaction against climate change has been more dangerous and terrible and foolish and many other things. And I think he doesn't actually believe in climate change per se. And he goes on to talk about LGBTQI, and there's more letters following that now, and he was making a point about people being offended by things like using an expression like biologically male or biologically female, and it offends trans people. That I don't want to come to a conclusion about that in this. I'm just saying here is a subject that is very sensitive, and people have very strong opinions about it on not just either side, but many sides, because it is a complex argument. We need to, I think, consider people's points of view, and I guess as a society protect vulnerable people. I don't know that we need to go silly about it, and nor do I think vulnerable people or minority groups or something get everything they ask for necessarily. But I think I can understand that subject in a way different to the author of the article I'm talking about. Because among other things, I know some trans people and gay people and things. And some of them are my friends and family. So I think it is a subject that needs consideration, but we don't need people to become extremists on that subject. I think it's quite reasonable. There's a broad range of views across the spectra, or indeed across the rainbow. But I do think that we need to be careful and treat people with care. And that is why I'm saying I have my points of view. I hold them strongly. I am open to change if there's good reason to change. But I think I am fiercely moderate. I'm not an extremist. But I do think people need defending, and that needs strong opinions and strong actions. And I'd be looking for the way that does the least harm while honouring truth. There you go. I'd recommend you be fiercely moderate.